All right, folks, welcome back and happy Tuesday, or as Dr. Jill Biden would call it, Taco Tuesday and the Bogotas. Remember that one? Unfortunately for New Yorkers, though, the elected governing body is composed of DEI hires and complete morons. These people couldn't solve a jigsaw puzzle, let alone soaring crime and inflation in New York and other places Democrat-run. Governor Kathy Hochul, the Democrat replacement to Andrew Cuomo, one of the dumbest politicians, by the way, in the nation, it's hard to say, but she is, just revealed her latest plan to bust inflation. Take a listen to this genius idea.
In my budget next month, they will send you a check to buy your groceries for a month or whatever you want to spend it on. And if you're an individual earning up to $150,000 a year, it's $300. What does that look like? If you're filing jointly and you have a family, you need a little more, right? Mm-hmm. Families are expensive. How about this? $500. $500.
Okay, this genius, they don't learn their lesson. They don't learn their lesson, folks. Joe Biden came in and gave away $2,400 checks and then $4,800 checks. Joe Biden came in and did exactly on a bigger version of what Kathy Hochul is trying to do in New York. Buy votes by giving away free money, give away checks. These clowns don't understand that is the number one driver of inflation, giving away free money. Government spending, number two, but give people a lot of money that they don't work for. They go out and spend it, and what happens? They drive prices up because they're driving up demand, not supply. They're not making more iPhones and bottles of Diet Pepsi. They're just giving people more money to spend. That's inflation. You drive prices up, you clowns, you morons. You lost an election. You got wiped out in 24 because of inflation. Trying to solve inflation with a $300 or $500 check is like trying to extinguish a wildfire with a spray bottle of gasoline. It's ridiculous. And it only increases our dependence, their people's dependence on the corrupt and greedy government. That's really what it's all about, right? Get them to depend on your $300 or $500 check or Biden's $2,400 check. If you depend on it, you're going to vote for the idiot, right? Wrong. We saw what happened in 2024. He drove prices up so high, people said, screw you. I'm done with this Democrat bullshit. And what happens to Kathy Hochul? She turns around after Biden gets slammed, Kamala Harris gets wiped the floor with, and she's trying to do the same thing in her stupid little state. You dumbass politicians, you dumbass Democrats, you stupid liberals. But I digress. It's a patch for her. It's a Band-Aid. We've got plenty to say about this. Let's react. Well, let me explain something to you. The last thing Americans need to do right now is depend more on the federal government for anything other than the bare minimums. My biggest issue with Kathy Hochul's plan to spend taxpayer dollars on checks for households for groceries is that it increases our dependence, New Yorkers' dependence on the government. Think about it. Let's say you have a family of four. And without that $500 check every month coming in, or whatever it is, every quarter coming in from Governor Hochul, you can't put groceries on your table. All right? So what do? What happens next? What happens when Kathy Hochul comes up with her next 15-second policy and the checks go away? That family, instead of adjusting their spending, or maybe, I don't know, going out and getting another job, or getting a better job, or getting an education so that the head of the household can get a better job to put food on the table. Instead of doing that, no, they just waited for the checks to come in. When the check stops, what happens? You're screwed. You're done. It's as bad as this may sound, the government is not your friend. And by supporting idiotic policies like doling out free checks to combat inflation and instead ignite inflation, all we're doing is increasing the government's stranglehold over the people. They've got you. They want you. They want your control over you. They want your power. If they know that people won't eat without their help, trust me, they will eventually do what it takes to get you to do it, or you'll starve. Besides, spending more money is the exact opposite way to combat inflation, Kathy. I'm pretty sure they teach that in like second grade, I think. Anyway, In other news, let's move on. Donald Trump just dropped another iconic truth. This one should be printed and framed in homes across the country. On Truth, he truthed this, quoting, "It was a pleasure to have dinner the other night with Governor Justin Trudeau." Yep, I said it right. Governor Justin Trudeau of the great state of Canada. "I look forward to seeing the governor again soon so that we may continue our in-depth talks on tariffs and trade," wink, wink, "the results of which will be truly spectacular for all, DJT." Now, if you didn't see what he did, that's the ultimate troll of the prime minister of the country to our north. The ultimate troll. Like, he joked about Canada becoming the 51st state. You know, Trump, he's wacky enough to maybe even push for this thing. I mean, people thought he was crazy when he said we'll build a wall, and guess what? He started to build a wall. It was working until the Democrats came in. Maybe they do want Canada to be 51, and maybe Mexico 52. I don't know. Not a horrible idea, really. People want to whine and complain about rants like this from Trump, but honestly, this is exactly what we need in America. Trump is hot on Canada right now, and while the whiny liberals want to call him a cyber bully, all the man is doing is exposing the fact that one of our neighbors has survived by leeching off us and our resources and this massive economic engine that the American people are. We're a $20 trillion engine that people like Canada, companies, governments like Canada and Mexico leech off. They suck off our money. They just take it. They take it. So Trump says, we'll put trade barriers up in Canada and Mexico. If you don't like it, too bad, then drop the trade barriers on the stuff we're selling into Canada and Mexico. He's going to do it with China, too. Folks, I remind you all the time, we truly do not hate the mainstream media enough. With the election behind us and nothing new to report about our absentee president, Biden, or his drunken loser of a VP, the clowns on CNN are back to what they do best, fear-mongering. Listen to this idiot rant about how she might get deported under Trump.
I might be deported because I'm a naturalized citizen. And Stephen Miller, who is Donald Trump's deputy chief of staff, has said that they're going to embark on a denaturalization program. So I could be deported. My citizenship could be taken away, and my children could be deported because they have birthright citizenship. So this is not what the country voted for. Let's be very clear.
Oh, good Lord, good Lord. You're naturalized. You're not getting deported, lady on CNN. And Stephen Miller isn't an evil man. He's doing exactly what he promised and Trump promised. Deport the illegals. And Joe Biden continued, and Kamala Harris, the borders are, continued to let people in, illegals in illegally, and they were warned. When Trump wins, you're going home. Stephen Miller is just enforcing the law that Trump laid down. Idiot lady on CNN. And by the way, keep it up. Maybe they will deport you. Just kidding. Don't call me. Don't sue me. Isn't it amazing that the executives over at CNN allow that type of garbage to reach a national audience, but then wonder why their ratings suck so bad? She's not going to get deported. The animals that Trump is going to boot are the ones who came here in waves, trafficked drugs, women, and children, and can't go to 7-Eleven without breaking a law. The thugs who assault civilians and police officers in Times Square. The invaders who leech off our government and spend our hard-earned tax dollars on new iPhones and Nike hoodies. Those are the violent, shameless leeches that will soon be shown the door back to the place they came from. Psst. CNN should focus less on spreading hate and lies and more on real news, like this story from Texas.
It's a breaking development in a story we first told you about yesterday. A Conroe elementary school teacher is no longer employed after denying first grade students access to the restroom. That news coming to us in the last hour or so from the school district. Parents shared a message from the Bartlett elementary teacher with KHOU 11 News. It said students lost privileges after a restroom badge was lost. The message went on to say several students wet themselves. Conroe ISD says it is committed to supporting impacted students and families.
I mean, I don't know about you, but if my kid came home and said, this teacher made me wet myself because they wouldn't let me use the bathroom, I'd go ballistic. I go apeshit, sorry. I truly hope that under Donald Trump will finally revive the standard that was once set for our education system in America. We're sliding, folks. We're getting beat by third world countries. I couldn't believe this story. A first grade teacher lets students literally, quote, wet themselves as they cried and begged to use the bathroom. That psycho should be institutionalized or worse. Our schools used to be second to none. America was known for our excellent public and private education systems and opportunities across all 50 states. Unfortunately, COVID changed a lot of things, and Democrats used that opportunity to grab our educators by the throats, enforcing them to push masks and vaccines instead of shapes, colors, and adding 2 + 2. The COVID bounce back is like 3 years late at this point. Our education system remains a hollow shell of what it once was. You have sicko teachers like that one in Texas practically abusing first graders as they cry at their desks. We all know about the drag queen story time and the transgender indoctrination in health classes and other. But enough is enough, right? Education is imperative. The U.S. needs to get this S together. I've been using that word too much, right? Get their shit together before we produce another undereducated generation of liberal congresswomen and Starbucks baristas. Okay, folks, in 2021, Goya would love the Goya folks. Goya launched Goya Cares, a global initiative to protect children and educate children on mental health. Goya Cares is providing schools and community centers with a preventative education curriculum and a free assembly that includes the viewing of the Goya Cares movie called Press Pause. Press Pause is intended to raise awareness regarding mental health issues, abuse, and bullying among children and teens in our communities. Press Pause is an educational film following young 15-year-old Sofia Rodriguez as she navigates adolescence, self-doubt, and an abusive relationship among her parents' turbulent divorce, set within the cultural context of her Hispanic family. The film explores her discomfort with unwanted attention from her uncle and the pressures of maintaining a facade of perfection in high school. It introduces the Press Pause campaign, promoting kindness and advocacy, highlighted by Sofia leaving a nice note for a friend saying, "You matter," and that friend was a bullied peer. The film encourages open family communication about mental health and culminates in Sofia's transformative realization of her right to seek help through the power of empathy and small acts of kindness. Press Pause displays the importance of being proactive in supporting one's community and underscores the critical importance of self-advocacy. Okay, folks, time for today's Truth Bomb. So this was a reunion of sorts. Steve Bannon, the great Steve Bannon, he and I go way back. We go back 20 plus years. Steve used to do a radio show with the most amazing political human being I've ever met and spoke to and hung out with. Steve Bannon and Andrew Breitbart used to do a radio show. I used to go on the radio show. We became very, very close friends and kind of lost our way a little bit. But at the beginning of Trump 2016, Steve was so involved. Steve and I were very, very close. In fact, Steve Bannon asked me to come to Trump Tower one day and be the Commerce Secretary to Trump 1.0. I was in the middle of a Fox contract. I loved it over there, so I respectfully declined. But Steve and I have been very close. Kind of lost our way a little bit, but I got back to the Bannon show earlier today. Here's a little bite.
Eric Bolling joins me. Eric, you're one of the original gangsters in this entire movement. Give me your thoughts. Let's talk about first the process of supporting the president's selections, his picks, his nominees. You got Cash, you got Pete Hegseth. I know you know Pete well. You've got Tulsi, you got Bobby Kennedy, you got some people outside the box as he wants, because it's not just he's a disruptor. He wants to take apart the administrative state and reform this government in something that gets done what the people need to have done and is at a cost that is not putting us in bankruptcy. Your thoughts, sir?
Let Trump pick who he wants. Trump wants to clearly break down the institutions that are deep state, that are corrupt, that are incompetent, and rebuild them. I mean, if nothing else, we have to trust Trump. Look what he's done. He's changed the world. He's over in France, and Macron and Maloney, and they're all just want to get near Trump. Jill Biden staring at him like she's got a crush on him. Some people are pushing back on Pete, some traditional MAGA people pushing back on Pete. And Pete will clean up for example, the $150 billion we've been sending to Ukraine against the American people's wishes, that's going to stop. And so some of the people who are pushing back on Pete are going to have to suck it up, Buttercup, and vote for him in the Senate level, because Trump will take the senators out that push back on Trump's picks. No question about it. So really good. You guys got to understand something. Steve Bannon is like the original thought leader in the populist movement, the America First movement, the MAGA movement. What a great guy. Really good to be back with Steve again. And we'll have, when we start doing guests, if you notice, we've been on 2 months and a day. We haven't done any guests. And we're going to start doing that soon. And Steve will absolutely be one of those. Really good to spend some time with Steve Bannon, folks. Truth bomb. Okay, besides everything else, there are two big stories out there right now, among many, by the way, that provide a pretty good barometer of where we are as a country. Well, number one, Daniel Penny, New York former Marine, acquitted in the death of Jordan Neely. And number two, the discovery of that suspect, who they believe is the shooter in the early morning shooting death of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. So let's get into it. Daniel Penny. Last week, I argued that the fact that this man was even charged for protecting innocent bystanders on the subway was a clear travesty. But it makes sense, both in Alvin Bragg's New York and in Joe Biden and Barack Obama's America, where such an act would be deemed as one that falls under toxic masculinity by those folks and deserved to be vilified. But on Monday, Christmas came early for a penny saved, in fact. A Marine veteran was acquitted of criminally negligent homicide in the death of 30-year-old Jordan Neely on an F train on May 1st, 2023 in the subway. And I must say, I never saw this one coming. To be honest, not in Biden-Obama's America, and certainly not in Bragg's New York. That speaks to what I also spoke about last week quite a bit, which is that slowly but surely, even before President Trump gets back into the Oval Office, the tide is certainly clearly turning. The not guilty verdict really surprised me, as I'm sure it did many of us. Of course, that feeling quickly turned into relief and elation, not just elation for Daniel Penny, who deserves to be free, obviously, in our opinion, but elation because it's a slap in the face to one of the most corrupt and inept district attorneys in this country, Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg. On Friday, the judge had already dismissed the more serious charge of second-degree manslaughter after the jury informed him it was deadlocked. But I think that many of us thought that the jury would come back and find Daniel Penny guilty of the other lesser charge, or at the very least that they would be deadlocked on that charge as well, meaning they have to go back and retry the case likely. But as we now know, they acquitted him, and that's great news. That tells me that the Trumpification of America, as I'm now calling it, is happening. And happening faster than we even imagined. Judging by the reactions we saw outside of the courthouse after the ruling came out, for some people, Neely was supposed to be the New York version of what happened in 2020.
We need some black vigilantes.
That's right.
People want to jump up and choke us and kill us for being loud. How about we do the same when they attempt to oppress us?
Right.
I'm tired.
Tired.
All right, so that guy calling for some black vigilantes is none other than Hawk Newsom, the co-founder of Black Lives Matter. He and his friend, the other founder, at least the friend has been found guilty of extorting money and using money, wasting and using the BLM coffers, donations, for their own good. I think the other one, I can't remember her name, she was buying homes with the donors' money. Anyway, that is Hawk Newsom, who's looking for black. But here's a point. There's like 3 people there. It wasn't this massive outpouring that after George Floyd had there's an uproar. It's over, folks. The tide has changed. By the way, their idea of never let a crisis go to waste, except there's no crisis here. It's just a man, a good Samaritan, coming to the rescue of his fellow passengers who were petrified of Neely. You see those left in the BLM movement who haven't been found to have used donations to buy houses or take lavish vacations and a new designer wardrobe seem to have found a new reason to take to the streets, or at least they're looking for one. Their last reason for doing so was George Floyd, who died in 2020. And energized the Black Lives Matter movement and a national movement to defund the police. Well, I'm afraid times are quite different now. It's not 2020 anymore, Dorothy. And America and Americans have changed. We've seen the pain and the detriment to society of the defund the police movement. There's a massive, sharp rise in crime, danger brought back to many in this country, in our cities, in our homes, in our towns. We didn't feel safe at home. Defund the police? Are you guys nuts? What the hell were they thinking? So here's a necessary reminder of how that went down with George Floyd, and compare the two. When they were trying to arrest George Floyd, a white Minneapolis police officer had kept his knee on Floyd's neck as he complained, "I can't breathe." Similarly, Daniel Penny was accused of keeping Jordan Neely in a chokehold for too long, which, according to a city medical examiner, had ultimately caused Neely to die. One of the causes. Not all of it, but one of them. Except here's the thing. In one case, the villain was a white police officer, whereas Daniel Penny, well, he's an architect. He's an architectural student, at least, who once served in the Marines. Penny was just like many of us, you and me, not a cop, but a private citizen. So that doesn't serve that progressive, defund the police are evil, the man sucks, they're against us narrative. But Alvin Bragg smacked his lips at the potential conviction, including a lesser charge in the indictment he hoped would guarantee a guilty verdict. Alvin Bragg. And of course, as expected, they played up the race card. One thing is true, they certainly are the party of predictability, aren't they? The media certainly played its part too, and continues to do so. Quote, white vigilante, calling Neely merely a Michael Jackson impersonator, and saying nothing about his history of violence, drug abuse, and arrests. And this.
That Daniel Penny should get the Congressional Gold Medal to recognize his heroism. I'm not asking you about anyone.
I think he ought to get medal. I think they ought to build a statue to this guy in New York City.
I think that race, and I'm going to say it. I'm going to say the dreaded R word. Race plays a role in this, right? And so we see it. Yes, absolutely. Because statistics say that.
Wasn't there a similar case in New York City?
Statistics say that when people kill people who are white, they tend to get harsher sentences, especially if they're people of color.
What about the Jordan Williams case?
That is what happens in our criminal justice system.
First of all,
no, I'm not going to stop because race absolutely plays a role in this.
I said, what about the Jordan Williams case here in New York?
Oh, please, this race car's played all over the place. Actually, doesn't. But the leftist machine, well, they've been hard at work making it about race, and it worked. The country sat up and paid attention. For those who marched for George Floyd, it confirms their notion that America and our justice system are built on racism. But to many of us, real people, to me, for certain, we didn't see through the race lens. We don't play the race card. This is about the good guys and the bad guys, and the question of whether or not we can protect each other in the face of a threat or evil without being punished for it. I know that most men prefer that there be Daniel Penny on their train to protect our women and children. I bet you most people would prefer Daniel Penny than Jordan Neely. And that says a lot to someone like the AOC when she doesn't agree.
That tells us everything. If we do not want violence on our subways, and the point of our justice system is a level of accountability to prevent a person who does not have remorse about taking another person's life. I mean, even people who have engaged in manslaughter or have taken a life accidentally express remorse. And so the fact that a person may express no remorse indicates that there's a risk that it may happen again. And if we do not want to unleash that level of violence, then we should exert a level of accountability to prevent that from happening again.
All right, let me get this straight. AOC logic here. Let me get this straight. The subway will be safer when we remove people who try to make the subway safer. Sounds about right, or should I say about left. Even New York City Mayor Eric Adams countered against how Jordan Neely was being portrayed in the media. Take a listen.
You can look at that on a multi-faceted approach of everything that's wrong with the system that we're facing. One, look at the photo that they used to show the victims. It seemed like it was a young, innocent child who was brutally murdered, and it gave that impression. When you looked at the photo that was being used, it wanted to set up in the minds of people that we were dealing with a young, innocent child that, just a Michael Jackson intimidator that, was just brutally assaulted. You have someone on that subway who was responding, doing what we should have done as a city and a state of having a mental health facility. Those passengers were afraid.
Well, here's the fact. Neely was a threat to himself as well as others, as his multiple arrests for assault would confirm. The left really hates when you bring out facts, don't they? But the fact is that Neely shouldn't have been out on the streets, and he needed help. Even the city's mayor admits that the system failed Neely. Daniel Penny risked his life, but put his strength of service of those who weren't able to defend themselves. He was protecting women and children on the subway. We talk about not being able to depend on men in our society, thanks to the barista class of the leftist idiot morons. Soy boys and girls, yet when a good man steps up, it's treated like some sort of villainous toxic masculinity, or worse, he's treated worse than the criminal itself. And even worse than that, Alvin Bragg sends out a message: if you see people in trouble, don't bother getting involved because the hammer is going to come down on you, especially if you're a white dude. Yet another reason why Alvin Bragg is a poison to our society, and yet another reason why the leftist agenda is outright dangerous and outdated to America. But lo and behold, the tide is turning. Once upon a time, we understood that those who do bad things are responsible for the punishment, the consequences. No one is saying that Neely's life wasn't tragic, or loss of it wasn't tragic. But he himself, Neely, was responsible for the events that led to his own death. He didn't have to come on the subway and threaten people. He didn't have to come on the subway and say, someone get up or get me a drink or someone's going to die. Why do you do that? You're an idiot. And you're dead now. Daniel Penny's story isn't over. There's no more criminal liability, but Neely's father, who abandoned him, has filed a civil lawsuit. By the way, Neely's father abandoned Neely, but the father somehow wants to make a buck out of it, right? He wants to make a buck. He's raised more than $3 million to go after Daniel Penny for his money. Too many times in our society, witnesses have turned away from those being attacked, raped, even murdered in our streets. Uncaring people refuse to get involved because it's too much of a risk. Hold it right there. True story. I'm on vacation with my wife. At the pool, someone goes in, a man, 55 years old, goes down. She sees it. My wife says, go help him out. He's drowning. I jump in the pool. I pull him out. I get him off to the side of the pool. Another guy comes over, and we're giving this guy CPR. He comes back. He starts breathing. He was out. He was gone. Starts breathing. We're giving him CPR. I'm sweating. It's hot. About 10 minutes into this, a lady swims over, and she says, I'm a nurse. Let's call the 911. We call 911. And I turned to her and I said, where were you? We don't know what the hell we're doing. We don't know CPR. We're doing what we see on TV. And she said, I'm a nurse. This is a convention of nurses and doctors. We can't get involved in this. We could get sued. If we get involved and he dies, the family could sue us. So a pool full of doctors and nurses watched me and some other idiot try and save a man's life. Thank God he was saved. True freaking story, folks. I can't make that up. But see, this is the same thing. We don't want to get involved because we're afraid of the consequences. Alvin Bragg made it worse for people to help other citizens of New York on the streets if something bad's going down. Look the other way, because God forbid I help and someone gets hurt. Alvin Bragg's going to come after me. It's bad. It's un-American. Daniel Penny came to the aid of fellow passengers. Daniel Penny should never have been charged and given a medal instead for civic courage. But the fact that Neely was acquitted tells me that we are at least moving in the right direction. The pendulum swung all the way left with BLM and Antifa and Obama and Biden, and it's starting to swing back right for Trump. Streets of New York. BLM, they're on the streets protesting the injustice, promising violence, says Hawk Newsom. Some black vigilantes. Well, that tells me that we're still living in Barack Obama's America.
Later in the night, we're also going to talk about Penny and the verdict there. Mm-hmm. There you also have a victim who somebody determined did not deserve to continue living, right?
No.
Yeah, tell me which vigilante action is okay.
One is being proactive, right? So this kid who executed a guy walking away from him, shot him in the back, for no reason whatsoever. Daniel Penny is a hero. You can say anything you want. Talk to people who ride the subway every day. Because I do all the time. So let me I can't find anyone who rides the subway who's unhappy about this verdict.
Well,
see what they did there? That's my good friend Arthur Adala, the lawyer. Great lawyer, by the way. But see what she did? CNN host Audie Cornish tried to compare the assassination of the healthcare CEO to Daniel Penny protecting people on the subway from criminal Jordan Neely. Pathetic attempt, by the way. They're doing it all over the place on CNN and MSNBC. But I'll give her this much. She did provide the most unnatural of awkward of segues to my next example of what's wrong with America in Biden and Obama at the helm. Nothing like the cold-blooded assassination of a healthcare executive to bring together the progressive left. Am I right?
Why would you be in such a celebratory mood about the execution of another human being? Aren't you supposed to be on the caring, sharing left where, you believe in the sanctity of life?
I do believe in the sanctity of life. And I think that's why I felt, along with so many other Americans, joy, unfortunately, because it feels like...
Serious?
I mean...
Joy at a man's execution?
Maybe not joy, but certainly not empathy. Because again,
we're watching the footage. How can this make you joyful? This guy's a husband, he's a father, and he's being gunned down in the middle of Manhattan. Why does that make you joyful?
Thousands of Americans that being murdered. So are the tens of thousands of Americans, innocent Americans, who died because greedy health insurance executives like this one push policies of denying care to the most vulnerable people.
Well, she seems nice, sugary sweet, now fired from Vox, New York Times, and Washington Post. Taylor Lorenz, relishing in the murder of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. And her reaction to his assassination is not just her own. This leftist, well, we've seen the other progressive left actually celebrating that death. And the details are coming out as fascinating. On Monday, the alleged assassin was found eating at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania, of all places. Luigi Mangione wrote a manifesto found on him that healthcare executives were parasites who had it coming. Just had it on them, just like that. That part's strange. The 26-year-old was arrested after a McDonald's worker alerted authorities after someone who was at McDonald's and a patron told the worker called. But they said that someone is a customer in the dining room at McDonald's who resembled the suspected gunman. And he has since been charged with the murder of Brian Thompson in Midtown Manhattan. What we do know about Mangione is this. Mangione comes from a very prominent family in Maryland. His grandfather, Nick Mangione, was a successful real estate developer. Luigi himself graduated valedictorian from high school. He went on to Ivy League UPenn and got an undergraduate and graduate degree in computer science. The guy was really brilliant. So he descends from wealth, went to an Ivy League university. What could have gone wrong, honestly? Well, in the handwritten manifesto found on his person on Monday, Luigi mentioned the more than $515 billion company, noting the size of the company and how much money it makes. He also said that UnitedHealthcare's market cap has grown while American life expectancy has not. Well, that has a lot to do with COVID. Side note, America's spiking obesity and overeating. Twinkies, Doritos, may have something to do with that fact, too. And Luigi was found at a McDonald's, not exactly a health food spot, is it? But I digress. Luigi Mangione's manifesto also condemned companies that continue to abuse our country for immense profit because the American public has allowed them to get away with it. So your run-of-the-mill anti-capitalist whose privileged life depended on it sounds a lot like AOC's dream dude. And Mangione reportedly wrote that he acted alone and that he was self-funded. Oddly specific, right? Okay, whatever. And he also said, and I quote, "These parasites had it coming. I do apologize for any strife and trauma, but it had to be done." So to be clear, if it was in fact Mangione who killed UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson, and he seems pretty empathetic and proud that he did, then it's pretty shocking that so many on the left are celebrating the assassination of a man, a father of two, and a husband. Or is it? Last night on The Daily Show, when host Jon Stewart mentioned that the suspected assassin was caught, well, he was met with boos from the audience. They're celebrating the alleged killer, murderer, who shot a guy in the back. They're demonizing the man who was murdered. So wait, interesting, right? Wait, can I do this? Okay, so when it suits our agenda, and I'm thinking like a leftist lunatic here right now, so go with, when it suits and supports our narrative on the left, liberal, the guy who dies is the victim, even though he's a known criminal and threatened people's lives, and the ones who defended others against them, well, he's the villain. See how they switch it? See how they just flip the script? Because the guy who died is African-American, Neely. And the guy who came to the rescue of his fellow citizens is a white man, Penny. I get that right? It just matters of the color of the victim and the shooter. Okay, if the guy who dies was a corporate guy, possibly with ties to Nancy Pelosi, by the way.
There was actually a lot of money coming from the government at this point. So you have ARA, which had somewhere around $25 billion that was earmarked for clean tech projects at the time. This is an insane amount of money from a startup perspective. If you can even just get 1/10 of 1/10 of 1/10, you're in great shape. And we had terrific connections. So we've had people like Nancy Pelosi, TJ Glother, the former deputy secretary of the DOE, working for us in terms of figuring out how to get a grant.
Well, let's let that sink in for a minute. We get that? Digest that for a few. I'm sure that little tidbit will come back into the fold. That guy mentioned Nancy Pelosi. So if the guy who dies was an executive in the healthcare industry, and the guy who kills him is a leftist who hates capitalism, well, then the guy who dies is the villain, the bad guy. And the guy who killed him, well, he's a hero. Met with boos when he's caught from the Jon Stewart audience, right? He deserved to get away with it, they said. Did I get that right? You absolute freaking sociopaths. What a ridiculous joke the left have become. What exactly has the Democrat Party come to represent? Political violence, whatever means necessary to get your point and agenda across. Piers nails it right here, Morgan.
Yeah, Taylor, I don't mean to be rude, but why the are you laughing all the time? I don't get it. Sorry, apologies for my language, but honestly, I find it unbelievable. What are you laughing at?
I'm laughing at Tommy's insane mischaracterization of why people are angry.
So yeah, Taylor, why the F are you laughing all the time? This woman is either crying her fake crocodile tears or she's laughing about the death of a father and husband. That's some ivory tower BS right there, folks. Sounds all about the left. I'm sure as hell, as this develops more in the coming days, there'll be more to uncover about the party of evil, and I'll be right here to uncover it all for you, folks. All right, let's leave you with this absolute gem. You know, it's always such a joy to watch the left implode, but it's even more joyous to watch it happen on The View. Couldn't happen to a better bunch of people, am I right? For your viewing pleasure, see what I did here. Watch Whoopi Goldberg, one of the most unnecessarily highly paid, quote, entertainers out there, fight on the air with one of her own, another overpaid leftist, Ana Navarro. Watch this. Listen.
Whatever he's going to do, he's going to do. But do take our word for it. Things seem to move slowly because, yeah, they didn't come get Hillary. But he has other people who are ready to go. But I don't think that they can just go out and do what they want.
I told you last week I disagree with you when you say that because we have the luxury of saying that because we're legal, we are successful, but if you're an illegal immigrant in this country, you're not going to be not in a panic. If you are a woman working for the Department of Defense, you have a right to be in a panic.
You tell people to stay fraught and like this.
I'm telling people to prepare. Whoopi. I'm
are-
telling people,
do you think they're not prepared? They are prepared.
So that
And
means
I'm saying
that
to
means that they
people-
can't be relaxing and enjoying
No,
Christmas
it doesn't mean that.
when winter is coming.
Take care of your family. And when we know what is happening, when we know what we're fighting, we'll get out and fight. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying don't do anything. I'm saying don't be this, because nobody can do it.
I think people
Would you
need
like
to
us
prepare.
to stop? Would you like us to stop? All right, we'll be right back.
Well, the ladies of the View, they can't figure their own POVs out anymore, right, folks? That's it for us on Tuesday. See you tomorrow, Wednesday. Looking forward to another great day. By the way, on Bannon, if you listen to Bannon's War Room, I was there earlier, had a great conversation with Steve. Also, we'll get Steve on very soon. Thank you, Steve Bannon in the War Room. Folks, that's it for us. Bolling out.